Very special host tonight, none other than Florian Bay. Now, I have to tell you that I've actually heard this event before in another district, and I found it so useful, along with my club treasurer, that I said, Florian, do you think Division A could host this in D91? And he said, of course, Antonia, thank you for asking. So that's why we're doing it. Now, who is Florian? Because there might be a couple of people here who don't know. Gula's just started crying, I think. So there you are. Now, Florian Bay became a Toastmaster in 2013, a point at which he actually was a little bit shy and he wanted to overcome shyness and limiting beliefs. But he joined and he quickly learned. And he became president and treasurer, and he became somebody to watch. And he moved up Toastmasters so fast that, in fact, just 4 years later, he became club growth director and went on to the district leadership trio. And last year, he was district director. So, yes, he's been through the three top roles, district director, and he achieved distinguished status in the district. One of the few districts in the world to achieve such a status. So there you are. Big clap to Florian.
Thank you.
There you are. So Florian is here tonight as club treasurer, and he has come to tell us about club finance, a very important subject and one that is often overlooked. But he's got a lot to tell us. So enough from me. Let's get on with listening to Florian. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction, Antonia, and good evening, everybody. It is exciting to see so many people on the call that are keen to learn about building a strong club through club finances. We've got an hour together. I mean, I'm happy to take as many questions as possible in the chat afterwards. We've got quite a lot to cover. This is an interactive presentation. I will be able to see you because I've joined from my tablet as well. So when I'm going to be asking questions, you can type in your answers in the chat. You can challenge me in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you so wish. But for the quiz part, answers in the chat is going to be the best way, and I'll just look through them as they fly. But to start off with, we're going to start with the why, which I think is always a good thing to do. And simple question, why are club finances important? After all, it's numbers. Numbers are boring. Couldn't we just ignore the numbers and just forget about them? Why are they important? Do
you want some verbal feedback from that or just answers in chat?
Whatever you want. Whichever way you prefer for this one.
Without having yourself on top of the finances, you can't run the club. You can't submit payments to TMI. You can't take payments. You don't know where you are.
Yeah, you don't know where you are. So Elizabeth says it determines the viability of the club. Guy from Amwick says to ensure survival. Excellent. What else? We don't have much. We need to make the most of it. That's a good point. Cover the cost of the venue, to be sure about the level of money to pay the expenses we have, pay for the venue. Seems to be a bit of a theme there in the answer, and you're quite right. Without club finances, without sound, healthy club finances to pay for consumable, to pay for the venues, to pay for other things, there is simply no club. I mean, even an online club would need to watch its club finances because, hey, memberships you still have to pay. And even Zoom, that isn't free. You might be wanting to send certificates by post to people as well. Expenses can quickly pile up in a lot of respect. Be able to think and plan ahead. And somebody says something I really like, shows accountability for finance to the members. We're going to cover that very shortly, actually. But first off, I know some of the motivation of the people that joined us today because Nick kindly probed a lot of people for their motivations. But we're going to also have a bit of a quiz later to kind of get to see how we stand. But final, what I want to say is really central to what we do at the club level. To start off with, there's the whole thing of the club success plan. A club success plan is something that clubs have to put together every year. in the best case scenario, it is a living document that is updated from year to year and from committee to committee. But if, for example, a club says, we want to do a special event about evaluation, we want to give extra special awards to people, these things have to be paid for. If it is, we want to double the membership, we might need to be more often to meet the members' needs. Are you going to pay for that? And this is where the concept of a club budget really fits in. Also, and quite timely, as we might be approaching hybrid meetings, clubs might need to buy equipment. The equipment that clubs can buy is limited by the Toastmasters International governing document, but there is a lot of flexibility in actually the kind of things that club can buy. For example, you could buy some microphones, some AV equipment as well. There are a lot of things that club are allowed to buy and perhaps even should buy because it makes the membership experience better and it makes the meetings better as well. Membership growth and retention. If you've got a growing membership and you're retaining the members that we have, that means that a lot more money is going to be coming through the club, which can be a good problem to have. My club, as we will see, the actual budget of my club at the moment, we have this very good problem and we've got to find solutions to it, which could be reducing the fees, could be doing other things. But it really, membership growth and retention and finance work hand in hand. Zoom isn't free. I am aware of some clubs that say, we don't want to pay for Zoom. We're just going to use the free version and limit the minutes to the meetings to be 40 minutes long. As you can imagine, it's not exactly working really well, but it is unfortunately happening in some parts of the Toastmasters world because they want to keep the cost low. They want to keep it as low as they can. Good philosophy, bad philosophy, I leave it to them for this side, but Zoom isn't free. If you pay for Zoom for 1 year, it's on £150, which isn't much, but still it has to be budgeted for. The venue high. When we're going to go back to our pubs, to our hotel, they will not have been making any money for a year. So when we come back, they might say, okay, we know you've got a bit of credit with us, you've got a contract, but after that, the fees are going to go up. The venue where my club meets of London Victorian meets, they've already told us point blank, after your credit is over, we will bump up your cost by 25%, which is going to be quite a significant increase for a weekly club. What choice can we have? Can we negotiate? We can try, but if they don't budge, it has implications for the club finances wise. Refreshments. A club could choose to have refreshments, food, and ideally not alcohol at meetings. The members need to approve. This has to be paid for. When clubs meet in pubs, it's actually quite common not to pay for the venue high per se, but rather to pay for drinks and pay for food that is then given during or after the meeting. One of my clubs had this arrangement with a pub in central London because they say, oh, you're going to have food and you're going to be buying a lot of drinks and so on. It's going to bring a lot of money behind the till. Our refreshments were effectively part of the venue high, but sometimes it can be separate as well. There are some clubs, they meet over dinner and the cost of the dinner is subsidized. There aren't any yet in District 91, but there are some in Paris, for example. Recognition, the ribbons, the certificates, the medals, they're all nice. We love them. We get a pumped up feeling when we receive something potentially in the post, but they're not free. They have to be purchased for. Recently, a very close friend of mine, she showed me a medal that they're kind of using for the contest in their club. It costed about £5, 25 zlotys. It's a club in Poland, which is £5 for us, but they're very nice. They're very well engraved, but still the members are loving them, but they weren't free. And last but not least, the member satisfaction. If the members are getting good value for money from their fees, they say, I'm happy to pay that much more because they get a lot. That's great. If they're a bit grumpy, may want to look something at the fees. I know I can see that some people are taking screenshots. Using a smartphone to take a photo of a screen is not the best option. If you're on the Windows, you can press the home key, the Windows key, and then Alt and a print screen, and it's going to save a print screen of this generally, which will be saved automatically in your computer, and you can look at it later, and it's in high definition as well. I just had to mention that one. I discovered it quite recently, and it's pretty useful. Now, let's have some fun. Let's have a bit of a quiz. I don't have a fancy tool like Menti where I can track everybody, but let's see what you guys say. Question number 1. Can a club provide discounts to membership fees? Yes or no? Please send in your answers in the chat. Somebody said no. Somebody said yes, yes. No, yes, yes, yes. No. Any more answers? Come on, keep them coming. No, not for TMI. Yes, yes to club fees, no to TI fees. Yes, yes, no. The answer is yes, it can, but these discounts will only cover the cost of the club the club part of the membership fees, not the $7.50 a month that you're sending to Toastmasters International, because you cannot discount that. The club could choose to absorb part of the cost of that fees, especially for new members fees, for example. That's a separate, but that's a separate discussion altogether, and it really has to kind of fit in with the membership. But unfortunately, there are no discounts per se on what we have to send to Toastmasters International. They decide the amount. We cannot really change the amounts at all, unfortunately. So we can't really discount this. Question number 2. Can a club reimburse members the cost of additional pathways pass? You've got a member, they've completed their first pass. Could you pay for their second pass? Yes, yes, no, no. Yes, no, 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 yes. Quite a bit mixed for this one. Melly, no. Somebody, yes, was a question mark. Politician's answer, perhaps. Sorry. Not in my club. Oh. Coming, keep them coming. No, don't forget the deadline for the free pass. So the overwhelming answer is no, and that is the correct answer. This is strictly prohibited according to the club constitution and the governing document. I don't know what the situation used to be for the old manuals. I would imagine it perhaps was fairly similar, but I'm not sure for that one. But now we're on Pathways. It's the educational program. Unfortunately, we can't really help out the members in that way. Fair, unfair, I think it's a debatable one personally, but this is the way unfortunately things are at the moment. Now, can a club provide honorary membership, i.e. could it decide to pay off somebody, to have somebody being a member for free? Yes, yes. Yeah, Barbara, I hope that if there's such a thing, you would be given it to it an Amwick, because you're doing so much work in that club. Yes, 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 don't know. No. No. Oh, that's a all capital answer, Gully. Are you sure? Not sure. So quite divided for this one. The answer is yes, it can. It is allowed under the club constitution, provided that the committee agrees, provided that the membership agrees, and the restrictions are outlined in the addendum of standard club option. So every club, you've got the constitution, but you also have the addendum of standard club option that you can modify on Toastmasters Club Central. Every club can set what it says there. And over there, you can technically offer somebody honorary membership. Could be a past member, could be a member that maybe has won the World Championship of Public Speaking. You would decide the criteria, but this is perfectly allowed and it can be done.
So Florian, this is Bob. I've got a question right away. I mean, I know the answer is yes, because it's implicit in the forms that you submit for a new club.
Yeah.
However, by the same token, clubs are not, as far as I'm aware, clubs are not allowed to pay for somebody else's membership out of the membership fees, so if all the members are paying fees to the club, then under what circumstance can that club decide that it's going to use those funds from one person to cover the fees of another?
That's the whole point of honorary membership. The club members would need to vote by a majority vote on who becomes an honorary member and for what reason. It has to be transparent.
Right. So
But I do agree. I
Yeah.
do agree with you that it does seem to contradict the idea that you cannot necessarily pay for somebody else's membership fees. So it is a bit of a contradiction there, which I take that on, and I take that on board. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Yeah, well, it does. I'm kind of cheating because I kind of know the answer, but it's important, I think, for us to understand that there is, on the one hand, a limitation, and on another, an option to provide this, provided indeed the club members agree and it's part of your bylaws.
Can a club spend its money in organizing social events or meetings? Could you go out for a meal, for example, a Christmas meal at club expense? Type in your answers in the chat. No, 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 no. Pretty decisive. Yes. That might be a cheeky one from Nick. Yes, yes. Oh, we've got a few yes. Guy, yes. Alexander Spencer, yes. Kule Cortis, yes. Yes. Oh, went from no to yes. It seems it's starting to be quite divided here, guys. Keep the answers coming. Yes, the answer is no. Under the club constitution, under the governing document, this is not allowed. The reason would be that not everybody that's a member of the club would necessarily turn up to a social event, and the money would only be benefiting a minority of the members as such, because like going for a meals or going for wine tasting, it's not core to what Toastmaster does. It's not part of really the mission and the constitution of a Toastmaster club. That doesn't mean that we cannot do a special event like the one that Hamwick did, for example, the Courtroom Chaos, but that was an educational event. It was a speaking event. There were evaluation, there was feedback. That's quintessential Toastmaster stuff. But going for one tasting or going out for a meal and having a few drinks, I remember when I was my first year of membership, we went for a social and the club president took out a card and said, the club treasurer said everybody can have a drink each. Not allowed at all. I didn't know at the time. Of course, I got the drink, but not allowed at all. And there were only 6 people that got that free drink, by the way, of a club of 30. Not great.
Florian, it's Bob again. I'm just going to jump in again and saying, so where's the dividing line between, I mean, I agree, you can't pay for social events. However, where is the dividing line between that and providing refreshments?
Refreshments is a different thing because it is part of the meeting. We're talking here about a social event, about something that takes place completely outside of the meeting. If you have refreshment, tea and coffees at the break and you pay for them or afterwards, that is part of the club meeting.
Sure, I understand. But again, it's one of those points of clarification, because unless you think about it, you might argue what is the difference between a social event and providing refreshments. My understanding is,
for me, it is. For me personally, it is quite clear. If there is food and drinks after the meeting, it is the after part. It is kind of the after thing after the meeting. It is still part of the meeting. It is quite clear. But if you go on a Friday evening, you go for bowling, you subsidize the bowling, or you get food on the club's money, that's a clear social. That's a clear social event for me.
There was a question from Gillian.
Okay. But can we order pizza party to promote the club? Yes, you can. The pizza party would have to be as part of a club meeting. So for example, you would have your normal club meeting, then you'd have an extended break with pizza, which is the pizza party. That's a club meeting with a pizza theme. It's not a social event. It is a club meeting that has a pizza theme. Because you're going to have speeches and you're going to have evaluations.
Gula has a raised hand.
Gule, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was the same thing about the pizza party, but you were also talking about some people may not want to attend a social event. But if you have a pizza party, some people might not want to eat the pizza.
That is correct. That is correct, but it will be the same as people that decide not to attend a particular club meetings because they're busy that night, they cannot make it. The pizza party is a normal club meeting that happens to have a pizza theme in the same way as it could be a Halloween theme, and you could have decoration, a Christmas theme, or even a Valentine's Day theme.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Florian.
Glad it clarifies things.
So I just want to get something straight in my head, Florian. If we go ahead as an online club and some of the local members say, oh, but you know, we still want to meet up, and say 10 local members met up and had a coffee.
Yeah.
And we made it into a sort of meeting, but it's just amongst us. We're not having a hybrid meeting. Is that just amongst us? So we couldn't pay for a coffee out of club funds?
If this is an interesting one. If it is transparent to the wider membership that it is going to be effectively a club meeting with speeches and evaluation and in a coffee place as like a one-off thing, you see, if it's not a club meeting where you don't hold any speeches, not on evaluation, it's a social event then. So everybody pays their ways if it's a social event.
Sure.
There has to be a clear distinction.
Clear meeting, clear.
Now, how often should a club set, Nick, quickly?
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, we're moving into a new world now with hybrid clubs.
Yep.
And if I'm a member of a club, you know, 200 or 2,000 miles away, yep, I'm never going to get the benefit of a crisps or a coffee or a orange juice, am I? Mm. So we you know, I'll never get the opportunity to. I will be attending the meeting, but virtually.
Yeah.
So should there be any specific changes in advice about that? If you're,
I would say it is up to clubs to decide there. It is up to clubs to define. My personal opinion, and I said it when I was president of Beckenham Communicator, when the VP started to be the mum of the club and organizing tea and coffee, is like, organizing the tea and coffee, it's not part of your role, but it's nice. So I lost the argument in the end. And a couple of reasons I wasn't keen on it. A, the time factor, because somebody's got to kind of prepare the teas and coffee, the biscuit and so on. B, the cost. And also, it just not everybody is there. Not everybody's going to benefit, honestly, want to partake. So for me, it was not core to what the club was doing. But the opinion amongst other committee members and members is, we want the social aspect. So that got brought in. Ultimately, it is a club decision, and I would hope that the club leadership team and club members would do their best to consider everybody's interest. That includes the people which might be 2,000 miles away and not being able to partake in such things, which could then be the question of, for online members, could there be an online membership fee? That's the question. Next one, how often should a club set a budget? Never, yearly, or every few years? People already answered yearly, and regularly monitored, yearly. Well, that was an easy one. It is indeed yearly. Ideally, now would be the time to start thinking about next year's budget. May, as part of the annual general meeting, that's when you would introduce it and the members would vote on it, which kind of is a nice segue to some other questions. How often should a club review its yearly budget? On an ongoing basis or never? Ongoing. It is, of course, on an ongoing basis. The spreadsheet can do the work for you. I will be showing some spreadsheets later, which kind of do this work of monitoring automatically and start changing colors when something is wrong. The spreadsheet can do the work for you. So the treasurer, you just have a look at it once in a while. Now, who approves the club budgets every year? Is it the president, the club committee, the club member, or the treasurer? Who should be doing this formally? Committee, club members, committee, members. Bit of a divide on this one. Committee, members, committee, members, committee. It is the club members, because it is the members' money. It is not the club committee's, the club treasurer's money. It is the members' money at the end of the day. For transparency, for good governance, They need to show how their money is currently being spent in the current year, and they need to know what the club expects to do with the money. And people have the right to say, I'd like to raise a motion that we spend less money on this instead. They have the right to do that. In London Victorian, when I put forward the budget for the 2018-19 years, I said, I think we should give money to the Smedley Fund. That got voted down because the members said, we don't agree. We don't know where that money is going to go. We'd rather keep the money within the club. And that motion got carried. The budget was amended as a result. It is the members' rights. Now, an interesting one. What is a club allowed to purchase? A tablet, a mobile phone, a laptop, external trading services, a car, or a meeting venue? As many as you want. If we have a club on this call that's rich enough to purchase a meeting venue, that would be great. Laptop, external training services, laptop, tablet, phone, whatever's going to be used for the club. So all of them, tablet, laptop, external training, not car, whatever would serve all the member, all except car, meeting venue, tablet, laptop training, a venue, laptop, meeting venue, external training. Wow, this is very interesting answers. External training services. Okay, there's a bit of a theme there, and I'm going to disappoint some people. It is only a tablet and a laptop computer. Again, this is all in the club constitution, in the Toastmasters International governing document. Tablet and laptop, it could be used for audiovisual equipment, for linking, for projecting, and all of that. Phone, what would it be used for other than for the guests to contact the clubs, perhaps? External training services, this is a big no-no because we already have an educational program in Toastmasters, which is Pathways. So if we have somebody that comes to do a workshop and say, hey, can you give me £100 to do that workshop? Not allowed to do that at all. What you can do is to reimburse somebody's expense if they come and deliver some training. So for example, we had a comedian doing an event for us in London Victorian. We paid for his dinner. We paid for his train tickets all the way from Amersham and Chesham. We paid for that, did a special event, but we couldn't, as said, he couldn't send us an invoice and say, hey, I want £50, I want £100. Not allowed at all. Car, what would you need a car for? Meeting venue would be nice, but that's not, because then the charity implication, the legal implication, what type of entity would you be? It would start to raise a lot of questions, effectively. Same for a car, because a car needs to be registered somewhere. What about a projector? Projector would be allowed. It's audiovisual equipment. Last question. Is a club allowed to conduct fundraising activities? No, yes, 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 no. Speechcraft, yes, no, of course, yes. The answer is yes, within limitations. I'm going to cover these later. Gule, you had a question. Is this funded by TMI? Could you clarify what you mean?
It related to the previous question, the tablet and the laptop. Or was it to do with the club budget?
It would have to come out of the club budget.
Okay.
If your club is rich enough to buy a laptop, a projector, no matter the cost, you can do it.
Okay.
I mean, early bird speakers in London, they got high-end equipment, which has accumulated over the years.
Good.
Now, another question. How much money should a club keep in reserve? Nothing, about £1,000, which I've kind of translated into other currencies, or it depends. And our membership building activities regarding as fundraising activities, no, they're not. They're normal. It depends. Max £1,000, £1,000 ideally. It depends. 1,000, a healthy balance. It depends. 1K ideally. Depends on the cost of operating. Nobody said zero so far. Enough to keep going for 1 year. Depends on their outgoing. And the answer is, it depends. It would depend on your outgoing. It would really depend on your operating costs. For a club, my home club of London Victorian, it will be far higher than it will be for an online club which only has a Zoom account to pay. So it really, really, really can depend. Now, I'm kind of going to briefly go through the core financial operation that you as club treasurer or as a club does. We covered some of these already, so it's kind of a bit of a short summary. First of all, the yearly budget as part of success planning. Important tool, and what I would really say is once you've done a budget for 1 year, you only need to revise it for the next year. You do not have to start from scratch. It is very important that at the club level, we keep record, we keep documentation, so that we don't reinvent the wheel every year and we make the jobs of people easier down the line. You've got a budget, you just update it the next year. You don't redo it from nothing. Operations, paying the bills, paying the venue, Zoom, all of that, pretty simple stuff. We also have, let's see, serving the members. This is by collecting the membership fees and right now collecting membership renewals. We're in the midst of this right now. I'm about halfway through it in my club as well. Some people have said they're not renewing. Achieving excellence. That's really for me reporting to the committee. This is how we're doing and also to the members. You could choose like every 3 months to have a bit of an update to the member. Hey, this is how we're spending our money. This is how we're doing. What do you think? You're perfectly allowed to do that. And I would even say you should consider doing this if possible. Transparency. The members have a right to know how their money is spent. And last but not least, do you need to grow the club? Do you need to retain more members? Know your break-even point. We will cover how to calculate this later on. Bit of a timeline. We're pretty much quite a bit of a way away down the year. Please take a screenshot of this for that. Remember, you can use the Windows key, Alt, and then print screen, and you're going to have a nice high definition images save on the My Video Capture folder, which is on your My Document Video folder. But really, none of this should come as a surprise to you. A lot of the tasks, I mean, there's a bit of a cyclicity to them. You start the year, you do the budget, you attend training, you do the renewal, and then a few months later, you rinse and repeat. But there are tasks that you're going to be doing all the time, monitoring the budget, knowing the break-even point, buying equipment potentially, paying membership dues. All of this kind of happens throughout the year. Let me quickly just have a look to see if there are any quick questions. Key principles for club finance. A lot of this is kind of common sense, but common sense and so common after all. So I'm going to kind of cover them in turn, and I'm happy to elaborate and answer questions on any of these. First of all, and that was mentioned earlier already, use a club bank account. A club mustn't be running on the back of somebody's bank account and then just tries and accounts for everything and reimburse the members, reimburse such and such as needed and pay the dues themselves. No, 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 no. And there is a very good reason for that. If your bank investigates your account and is like, there's a lot of coming and going on that account that don't seem really normal for a normal bank account, they could close down your own bank account. You wouldn't want to be in that situation where your own bank account is closed and then the club is closed as well. That's a nightmare. You don't want to be, just don't go there is really my honest opinion on this one. Opening a club bank account can sometimes be tricky. It depends on the bank. And here is a list of the typical document that will be needed. First of all, ID document and a proof of address for at least for 1 or 2 signatories, the treasurer and the club president, ideally, which are changed every year. Secondly, the bank may like to see a copy of the club constitution. Not always the case. When I showed it in Barclays once, they say we're not interested, but another time they took it and they scanned it. So best to be prepared and have more than you need. Another document that's useful is to have a minute of the committee meeting that says, we're going to be opening a bank account with such and such club. I can see Barbara Saff is nodding. She's an experienced club builder. gone through that process before, it's definitely a useful thing to have. Other things to consider would be to have a copy of your club budget. There have been situations where Barclays Bank contacted me. They say, as part of our yearly audits and so on, we want to know what you're doing with that account. So they asked me some question and I answered the question in a letter form, and I sent a copy of the budget as well. Never heard back after that. So these are ID and proof of address, the club constitution, the minutes of the meeting, and your budget. In terms of which bank to use, I am reluctant to give an advice on a specific bank because it changes all the time. What might be valid now may not be valid in 6 months' time or in a year's time. I don't know if any club have had any luck with the online banks like Starling Bank on Monzo and so on. It could be an avenue worth exploring, these new online banks in the fintech industry, but I don't know of any club that has had any success yet. I'm not on omniscience. I don't know everything that goes on in the district though, as much as I'd love to. So maybe some clubs have been lucky with it. Anybody has experience there, feel free to share in the chat because that could be very interesting for everybody. Club minutes when officers are elected. Anne says, difficult to change every year. It can be, which is why the process should really start in May if you need to change the secretary, or you could keep the same club treasurer for a number of years, which does alleviate some of the issues, but that will be a decision for the club and for the club treasurer. What happens if we haven't been able to open a bank account? Nick is asking. It can become quite tricky in that situation. A possible alternative could be potentially to use PayPal. Another payment platform that could potentially be of interest that is similar to PayPal is Payoneer. I've been doing some online freelancing work now for a few months. I am paid through Payoneer, and then I transfer the Payoneer money into my club bank account, into my own bank account. Sorry, not my club account. You can, however, get a MasterCard attached to a Payoneer account. So if you get the membership money coming in on Payoneer, hypothetically, and then get a card, you could potentially pay the Toastmaster membership fees directly for that. I haven't explored that possibility in detail yet, but being a bit familiar with Payoneer now and having used it for a number of months, it could be an option. There are fees, however. When I get paid sometimes like $5 for that freelancing works, $3 of the dollars are taken as fees. So there are fees for taking in payments. Like PayPal, it's all the same. Nothing is free, unfortunately. Every time you have got to payment, submit them ASAP, especially like big invoices and so on. The membership renewals right now, it makes sense to do them in bulk, I understand, but don't really keep hanging on for days and weeks either, because it's not really good hygiene and really good practice. It's like paying a supplier. When you buy something, you don't say, oh, I'm going to pay you in a week. Goodbye. You just pay it immediately. Let's try and adopt that if possible. Know your break-even point. We'll find out how to calculate it soon enough. Be conservative with the money. It's best to budget to have more, to make a small loss and to make a small surplus in the end than the other way around, because you'd rather want to have too much money in your club rather than too little. Start asking for renewals early. Toastmasters is starting to make it a lot easier. They opened the renewals on pretty much on the 1st of February this year. So now the renewal windows has extended considerably. Let's kind of match that. February, let's get the ball rolling. Valentine's Day, I started asking people for renewals on WhatsApp. I did the chasing on WhatsApp already, because that way you're going to get, it's going to be less pressure. You don't have to worry as much. You don't want to be scrambling everything at the last minute, which is never a good thing to do. And last but not least, know your actual expenditure from a ledger. Your ledger of transaction is where you're going to be inputting everything, just like a ledger in a bank, just like for a company. It can also be audited. Bob Bauer's Club of Canary Wharf Communicator, he organized an audit. It's good practice to do because that way it's fully transparent. Now, how do you calculate your monthly membership fees? And this is where I'm going to start sitting down because I will be looking at some Excel pretty soon. So how do you do that? Any ideas in the chat to start off with? Pick a number and double it. That's an approach, I suppose. 7 USD per calendar month. This is the Toastmasters International fees. But what about the things you have to pay on the top? Start by understanding total spend. We're getting there. Cost plus margin. Getting there. Cash flow spreadsheet. Maybe. Getting there. The formula is pretty, base it on 20 members. Find your total expense and dive it by 20 members. TMI fees, expects fee, venue consumable reserve. Okay. The formula is really pretty simple. It is as such. Your monthly club cost divided by the number of members that you have right now. You could set it to 20. You could set up to a target number of members, but you need to know your monthly club costs. How much do you spend per month on your venue? How much do you spend per month on average on consumable and all these things? Don't do it over a 6 month period. Do it over a monthly period, please, because it makes everything easier that way. And then you've got the Toastmaster dues element, the $7.50 a month, which could potentially rise in the future. We're overdue for a dues. We're overdue actually for a dues rise, in my opinion, because the last time was 5 years ago, and it tends to be every 5 years. So brace. Divided by the exchange rate. I put pound to dollar here. It could be euros to dollar. It could be peso to dollar, whatever is your local currency. And there is a spreadsheet which I will be sharing in the chat, which is your fees calculator there. So let's say that your venue I cost about £150 per month. You got that number of meetings there. This is over 6 months, but that's fine. Got your totals and everything, your average membership, you know, your exchange rate, and it told you £20 a month. If you had 30 members, this is going to be £17 a month. If it's 36, 5, it's more members you have, the lower you can set the fees. I will be sharing this this spreadsheet in the chat right now, so that you get to have you get to play around with it and you get to use it in your own time. Club finance and break-even calculator. I don't want the one in euro. I want the one in sterling. I will be sending the one in euros as well. Okay, so is this because it's open? Okay, I'm having some issues sending this, so right. Don't save, no. Let me try to send it. Let me try to send it again, because I'm very keen for everybody to get this. It worked, right? So you cannot send a file that's already open on Zoom. This is useful. Another tip from me: set up an iZettle or similar account. Yes, very useful to get fees. How do you calculate your break even? You pretty much do things the other way around. I'm going to open the document again. For your break even, it's the same thing, but the other way around. You would calculate your cost over either a monthly period or a 6 months period. 6 months period is better for break even. So let's say the venue is going to cost £100 per meeting. Over 6 months, we're going to have 13 meetings because we meet on the first, third, and fifth of each month. Consumable £100, PR marketing £100. This is your cost base for 6 months. That excludes the Toastmaster cost, by the way. Then that way you're going to get to see, okay, these are our current fees, £10 a month. This is the current exchange rate. That calculates how much you need to send to TI per month per member. So you can see, so the £4 extra is the net you've got for every month. In that situation, you need 63 members to break even. Now, you only have, let's say, 25 members, you're losing £900 per month. You already have this calculator. It's another tab in the document I shared in the chat. So what about if we raise the fees to £15? Now you need 28 members to break even, which is a far more sustainable situation to be in. But let's say you want to be sure, 16's bang on time. This is a super conservative calculator. It doesn't take into account the new members that are going to be joining. It doesn't take into account of sales. It's an idealized target number of members for a 6 months period. But as I said, best to be conservative when it comes to club finance. Some good practice on fees, and one of them I learned it the hard way myself recently. Align any fees change to the start of a membership cycle. Recently in London Victorian, we said, are we going to reduce the fees up to the from £20 to £15 a month to the end of 2020 because we assumed that we would be back to meeting in person over the autumn. That's back in the summer when we made that decision. This didn't happen. So everybody that renewed their fees, they renewed paying 3 months at £15 a month and another 3 months at £20 a month. Came October time, we realized actually we can keep the fees at £15 a month until further notice. Guess what happened? I then, as a treasurer, had to contact 30 plus people individually and say, what do you want? Do you want a refund on your fees? Do you want to gift it to the club? Or do you want to keep it as a credit until a future renewal? Most of the people didn't reply to the email. So by default, I say, no response, it's a credit for a future renewal. But now I may have a situation where some people that opted to have a £15 credit, they're not renewing their membership. Do not do the mistake I made. I can see Barbara is doing a face palm. Yeah, I got to deal with refunds. Any fees change, don't do them pathways through the year, either from the 1st of October or from the 1st of April. Nothing else. Otherwise, you're going to be in a pickle. You're going to have to deal with refunds, with credit. Don't do that because it's extra work for you. Keep it simple. Your monthly fee should be a whole number. Sometimes I hear of clubs like, oh, it costs £58 to join for 6 months. And I'm like, okay, but if I'm only like 4 months in, what does it mean? Keep it simple. Whole number, 7, 8, 9, 10, not 7 point something. Keep it simple. Didn't see the Excel shared on chat. Will it be shared on here? It was already shared in the chat. Has it been shared to everybody or only to? Oh yes, it was shared only to the timer. Sorry. Thank you for pointing that one out. Oh God, network disconnect. I need to close the file before sharing it. Oh, I don't want to.
No, it's shared. I can see on the chat. I can see on the chat.
Yeah, it's the Euro version that has been shared, not the UK, not the sterling one. So I'm gonna share the sterling one. Now I need to know that I need to close some things. Now, for the attention of your VPM, have a nice little table that says this is how much you need to pay. This is how much you need to. This way, if somebody joins, they need to know how much they need to ask that person to pay. And the last one, if you do use discounts, be sparing and clever with them. Tied to an open house, tied to a special event, maybe, but just don't go over the top. I don't think it's good fees practice to have too many members having paid different things, because people then can ask questions and you don't want to get that trouble, really. This, what you're going to see here, is an example of a club budget, but it looks much better when you get to see it for real. This is the euro version. I don't want the euro version. I want the pound sterling version there. Sorry if there are any Europeans on the call. So this is what it looks like. And it's been split between 2020 and 2021, between 2 half years, because online meetings, in-person meetings. The way this document works is the key variables, you play around with them. Anything in yellow, that's where you can kind of play around with it and so on. You can play around with it on, and such. There are formulas there to do things, but I'm going to send 2 versions of the budget in the chat. This one and another one that's kind of a little bit more sparse. This is then going to create numbers for your budget there. It's all formulas that feed from above, and your actuals, it's over there. Let's say on the 2nd of July, you had somebody that joined in. It's NA. That person is Antonia Harrison. She decided to become a member of this club. Membership fees. It's a credit. She decided to pay £120. Now, oops. We put it down. You can put a note there, joining until 30th of September 2022, whatever you want. And then it's magic. It all appeared in here. So this is going to update based on the ledger. This is your budget year to date, where you should be in terms of expected income and expenditure at this time of the year. And this is going to tell you how much you're kind of above or under it right now. So you don't really need to change much with that spreadsheet. And if you want to see like a real version, this is my current club budget for London Victorian for this year. You can ignore that one because we know it's not going to happening, but now we don't expect to have any in-person meetings or anything. Our venue costs have been 0 this year because just not really going to spend on anything. But as you can see, we have a good problem in London Victorian right now. We're making a lot of money because we lowered our fees from 15 to 20, from 20 to 15, but not really lowered them any further. So we're building up quite a bit of a reserve. And the next committee meeting was like, we need to discuss what we do with it. It will be useful next year, especially because we made a loss the previous year. We can buy equipment. We're going to need to be discussing what we do with that money. Could we reduce the fees further? Maybe we could. And this is an actual ledger. I mean, this is I need to send in the renewals for these people. This is how it looks like a couple of months through the year, basically. There's a README tab, which you
could reduce your fees further, but it's always difficult. It's easier to go down than it is to go up. So when you go back to in-person meetings, and then you have to say to everybody, look, we've been charging you 15, but now we're going to have to charge you 25 again. People
especially say, because
we got used to 15.
For a club like London Victorians, this is last year's budget, £9,000 a year on the venue, because we meet every week. We meet every week. We exceeded it actually because they put the fees up. It can add up, and as you can see, we made a loss. Reason being pretty much coronavirus. And we paid for the venue. We now have money in credit with the hotel as well. So I'm going to send you last year's version of this budget in the chat so that you can see what a fully developed budget looks like. We have to be sensitive to people's situations, yes, which is why you can afford to be flexible. Treasurers can afford to be a little bit flexible, I think, at the moment. Use it sparingly, I would say. This is a simpler version that I'm sending out. Given these members' money, a proposal should go to a vote. Yes, it might very well go to a vote of the members.
That was actually a response, in my opinion, to a question from Nick.
And let me just share an actual budget. I'll do the last year, the simplified one, which is pretty much the same. And Nick question, should we give money back to members or save for the next TM year? Yeah, that would be something to budget carefully and discuss. My view is it's better to save because there are some clubs that are going to go back to in-person meetings with not a lot of money in the bank. You might these reserves, they're going to be super useful right now. And if you need to buy equipment, if you go hybrid, be conservative with money. Best to have too much rather than too little.
And a corollary to that is that if the treasurer's done a decent budget, they can articulate pretty well why the club should retain the funds or not. But I mean, if there's a proposal, it needs to be backed up.
I mean, in my case, I've got a history that stretches back to 2014, and I'm going to be making some graphs and say this is how the money has evolved over the years. We also have a club savings account, which we actually voted when we opened it because there was a decision of the members. Money should never go out of this account unless there is an emergency. And if money would have to go out of that account, it would be an immediate vote of the members because it's really like something, it is there, you don't touch it, emergency. And interest, do we get a bit of interest? Well, 17 pence per quarter because interest rates are quite low nowadays. In-person meeting, I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but what will you need to plan for? Couple of things. But first of all, your exact date will depend on your local restrictions. Whether you're in England, you're in Wales, you're in Scotland, you're in Northern Britain, in Southern Britain, France, it will depend. I don't know. Summer, autumn, difficult, which makes the job of the treasurer challenging. Will you carry on meeting online? Will you become one of the club that's going to be like a part hybrid where they alternate an online meeting and an in-person meetings? If you meet online again, that means you're going to be spending less money on your venue. So the budget needs to reflect that. Will your venue cost be the same? Blue Orchid Hotel, they already told us 25% extra, please. So our cost will bump up to £240 per meeting, including VAT. That's a lot of money. Central London for you. It's a 5-star hotel as well. Do we get tea and coffee for that? No, we don't. We could ask maybe. Will you rescind any fees reduction? The answer, if I look at my own club of London Link Victorian, is yes, but we don't know when. I think the earliest could be the 1st of October onwards. Latest might be the 1st of March next year. This is how far we sometimes need to plan ahead with finance. How much money do you have in the bank? In the case of my clubs, I know we've got, as you can have seen, 5K. It is a lot, but for a club that has to spend like maybe 3,000, nearly £3,000 a quarter on venue, that goes out quite quickly. And the money you have in the bank, it really needs to last for 6 months because it's only every 6 months that you get a lot of money coming in as people renew. So you need to say, which really brings me to the last point. How much money will be in the bank, you think, on June the 30th? Will it be enough to cover any cost? And what does next year's budget look like already? This is how far we need to plan ahead now because of COVID, because we just need to think what maybe not, but be conservative throughout. We don't want any clubs to go bankrupt. We'd rather our clubs have more money than needed. Fundraising, really quickly. There is a protocol for that, protocol 8.2. And the only restriction really is that at least 1/3 of the income from one club must come from its membership fees. So technically, in the case of London Victorian, we see that last year we made £10,000 of membership income. We could have raised up to £20,000 of fund extra. How would we have spent that money? I don't know, but in theory, we could have done that. So say you have a club that would meet in a super expensive venue costing £1,000 a meeting, you could decide to raise a lot of money through fundraising to pay for that. In theory, would you want to do it? It could quickly become a full-time job. So, but the option is there. Speechcraft is a good way to raise money, but there will be limitation in terms of how clubs can charge on Speechcraft soon. Because Speechcraft is changing, there will be limitation. Not going to be as much freedom as there used to be. I'm aware of some club that charge £200 per person for an 8-week Speechcraft course. I think it's brilliant value for money. May not be able to charge as much now in the future. I mean, a professional 8 weeks public speaking course will be a lot more than £200. So it's still good value for money for me. Special event can be effective. What we've done in my club before is we had a workshop where an external speaker came in. It was on a non-meeting night, and we went for dinner afterwards, and it was a ticketed event. Can be very effective. A lot of work to organize, though. If a club would want to go heavy down the fundraising route, I would suggest having a separate VP of fundraising to do that. But it could be done in theory. I'm afraid I've spoken a lot. And it's just kind of about 5 minutes past 8. Any questions from all of you? I'm afraid I've covered a lot of topics. It's been quite extensive. Any questions, please shout out.
I have a question, Florian.
Go ahead, Guy.
What is the definition of fundraising? Can you say, for instance, could you go off and provide speech services to somebody else and bring money back to the club as long as it's within that 2/3?
In theory, you could. In theory, as Amwick speakers, you could decide to coach somebody on their public speaking skills in exchange for money that would go for the club. In theory, you could do that. It would be unusual. I'm not aware of a club that would have done something like this before, but in theory, this is something you could do.
Cool, thanks.
Any more questions, please? It's been
Yes. Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, Shufei.
The information is really, really useful. So thanks for Florian. My question is, first, will you share your presentation, because there's lots of useful information. Again,
Yes, I can arrange to share my slides.
Yeah. Secondly, it seems that because I am thinking joining give a go for Cheshire Road, but according to what you say, it seems there are loads of like rule and condition and notice. So do they have any standard document which supplied by Toastmaster International which we need to follow?
Okay, the standard document really is the club constitution for that, which kind of is also Alexander's question. It's really the club constitution. If you also Google Toastmasters use of club funds, you will go to a separate page that outlines a few of this as well. And what I would say is don't be too overwhelmed by the rules and regulations and so on, what you cannot do. I've been a club treasurer for nearly 7 years now, and I've done it in multiple clubs. It has been really rare for me to find myself in a situation where I had to ask questions about what I was doing, whether it was the right thing or not, and I needed to double check something. For most clubs, the basic role of the treasurer will be setting the budget, setting the fees, knowing the break-even point, processing the membership fees and renewals as they come in, In my home club, the VP membership actually pays for the membership fees directly. I'm not involved. They actually have a copy of the club debit card. I trust them. It works on a trust basis, and it saves a lot of time. And they own the process. Basically, they own all steps of the process that way, which I prefer. I think it's more efficient. And to pay for any suppliers like the venue and so on. So unless you are a member, you're going to be a treasurer in a club that's very large and there's a lot of fancy things, the role shouldn't be too time consuming. For me personally, the amount of time I spend on the treasurer role is less than an hour a week on average. It's a bit higher now at renewal time, but even then, it's not like it's super high. I can still do an hour a week. There are some times where 15 minutes, I update the ledger, or I just have a look at the club bank account. I'm like, okay, such and such has paid. It's fine. It's not really a time-consuming role in a lot of respect.
There's many earlier. You mentioned some do and don't things. I think if some of those things they're not allowed to do, but in our club do it, what's the consequence? So these main things, the rule.
What are the consequences?
Yeah.
What are the consequences? I mean, unfortunately, I would. This is going to be a bit of a wider conversation. In Toastmasters International, we've got all these rules and regulations, but we're not always very good at enforcing them. Like branding, technically clubs shouldn't do certain things, but we ignore a lot of things. And district leaders, when I was district director, I actually, when I visited Amwick, I remember there was this roll-up banner with a logo with a boat on it. And I said, guys, I said to Barbara, I think this is not really allowed, but I'm kind of let it go and so on. It's a cool logo, but I didn't have any power to enforce it or to sanction the clubs. And the organization in theory does has these powers, but they're not really used. So the worst that can happen is, to be quite honest, not much, but you could be in a situation where members ask a lot of questions, or they won't ask things, and you might be like a deer in a headlight trying to answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. This is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
As an additional piece of information, if you go and look at the Club Leadership Handbook, which you can obviously look at online, page 37 and 38 has a job description and responsibilities and links to the relevant section in the club policy manuals. So I think that will be a good guide to your question about what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Thanks.
So Florian, I again, I have actually it's not a question. I guess it's more of a point. I think, again, there's some excellent content here. And indeed, there's arguably more to consider when it comes to, ensuring that you, the new signatories to the account get signed over, that you do an audit, etc. Given that this session has taken an hour and there's more to cover, it just highlights that when we do club officer training for our treasurers, we're not even scratching the surface. And in fact, on occasions, we don't address their needs or enable them at all. I'm not necessarily looking for an answer today, but certainly something that we need to look at. How do we ensure or better enable ourselves to train our treasurers appropriately at club officer training?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid and a very relevant point. My answer for this one really would be, and it's kind of more of a general recommendation, increasingly over the past few months, I think that the way we approach club officer training as a district perhaps could be revolutionized. Because we now have seen, and I had a discussion with Eleanor yesterday about this, club officer training attendance this year has hit absolute records. We're back to the levels where we were 5 years ago because we are doing this online. Online club officer training is working. It is a good medium. We can have some interaction. We can have some interactivity if we get good presenters as well. And it's just more flexible for people to attend. We recently had a TLI focusing only, Toastmaster Leadership Institute, don't use acronyms, Florian, focusing only on marketing. I personally feel a way forward for training in the district next year could be to do the training by role, no longer by area or by division, but to do the training by role. Training specific to treasurer, specific to VP, specific to VPM. This is an option that I would invite next year's team to look into, to have a lot more role-specific training than was the case before. Because it's much easier to do online now. And the problem we often have in in-person training is you have 10 people in the room and only one treasurer. No point in doing specialized training.
When I look at the Division A statistics out of the 21 clubs, and I looked at who had attended by role, 21 presidents, and then the VPEs, and then the VPMs, and it went on. Treasurers, secretaries, SAAs, a much smaller number. It wasn't one, it might have been like 10, but yes, we have to make those trainings relevant for those other 3 roles. We have to give them that, and they have to feel that there is something they need to know about club success plan and all those other roles that are very important to the club's success.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to investigate. I see somebody's mentioned that there are breakout sessions. We have done breakout session in the Leadership Institute before, but the challenge is when you do a breakout session and you get like 5 new treasurers discussing, this is what we should be doing. You can get some useful insights from it sometimes, but not always. Because if they're all new, what do they know? The blind leading the blinds.
There is a WhatsApp group for treasurers.
Yeah, there is a WhatsApp group for treasurer as well.
Again, sorry, I'm happy for other people to ask questions, but I've got a couple of thoughts or questions.
You're very welcome.
Given that it is a challenge, particularly at this moment in time, to change signatories on bank accounts, would you support the idea that treasurers should consider a 2-year posting as treasurer within the club to provide additional continuity and ease with the signatories on a bank account?
It's worth considering. It's worth considering in my view. I've been treasurer for 7 years. I will be looking to hand over at some point. I mean, I like doing the role, as you can see, but I think it's definitely useful to consider 2 years term for treasurers.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that wasn't raised this evening, although you did kindly mention it a little, was with respect to an audit.
Yeah.
It is actually is a requirement, but also good practice that the outgoing treasurer concludes the year by having an audit committee which looks through all the bank, all the paperwork or whatever, and presents that to the incoming treasurer and incoming president, and then to the club at an AGM. In that way, the outgoing treasurer knows that they are, they're clean, and they, and that the incoming treasurer importantly knows that they are not inheriting some viper in the pit somewhere, that they are inheriting a clean account.
Yeah.
And that would be an opportune time, of course, for the incoming and outgoing treasurer, to present at the AGM on last year's finances and a budget for the coming year. So I'm just saying, I think that is good practice. I see it very rarely, but would recommend.
It definitely is. It definitely is good practice, in my opinion. We never really done it in my club, but we should potentially consider doing something like this. But I do keep copies of all the bank statements and all the receipts organized very neatly, because should somebody want to have a look at everything, it's all there. Nick.
Yeah, it's really interesting point about the auditing. I'm actually president in a club where the treasurer has been there for 3 years now, and I think that one of the things that I want to do is to do this sort of audit exercise, whether it's an external person outside the club or whether it's a couple of people inside the club. I don't know, but I've struggled with that in just getting people to commit their time to actually just going through. It's not 1 year; it's going to be 3 years. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Question for Bob here. Now, I'm a professional accountant and I'm an auditor. It's a very specialized skill. Now, how are we going to make sure that if we have to do these audits, that people have the right knowledge, maybe something, documents to tap into, to read, to understand if we're doing internally? Do we have something in place from TMI, or do you suggest we set something up in D2091? How do you suggest we go about this?
An interesting question, Frank. In fact, there are probably interesting 3 questions there. There is no guarantee that we have somebody inside a club who is competent at audits. For what it's worth, my experience has been, and I guess particularly being in London, that there hasn't been a shortage of people who have banking industry knowledge and indeed a modicum of accounting knowledge. I mean, not to your level, Frank, because I know that this is your specialism. So not a good answer to your question. But at the moment, an audit where people review outgoing treasurer, incoming treasurer, and somebody who is not a member of the committee, probably even a new member, because I think most people at least know how to look at a bank statement and to do a modicum of reconciliation between incomings and outgoings. So I think at this stage, any audit at that level is a step forward. Now, your next question was, could we set up? My answer is, do we perhaps set up an audit competency or an audit set of standards or rules? I'm not sure they currently exist per se in Toastmasters. There's no reason why we couldn't or shouldn't. And maybe it's for somebody like, Florian or you, Frank, or somebody else to say, let's sit down, let's agree what would be good practice for clubs when auditing their accounts. Even if it is a set of guidelines and rules, you need to do this, then this, then this, then this. That will be a step forward, in my opinion. So if you're volunteering, Frank, to support, I'm sure people will be interested.
I can speak to Florian and yourself about that. That's not a problem. To add to what you said, all the good stuff, Bob and Florian. Thanks for the evening, by the way.
You're welcome.
I think we need within club officer training, so courts, to have a session for treasurers and auditing and such like. Why? If we are all volunteers here. So yeah, treasurers will move on either annually or 2 years or 3 years, whatever timeline they stay. Therefore, everybody should have some elements of education about what needs to be done for our finances so that the clubs can keep going. It's a suggestion. I hope people can take that into account, because I do think it's a skill we all should have, not just be able to be leaders by communicating, but being leaders to understand how our finances work. So I think that's how I'm going to step back from my question at the moment. Thank you.
Carol.
Carol Cadogan?
Yeah. Can't hear you. Could you type your question in the chat if you cannot?
Florian, just while you're waiting for the question, just a quick, I've had a look at Payoneer. I've found it online.
Yeah.
Somebody else mentioned iSettle, and obviously I know Stripe and PayPal. Are there any other online places where we can go to have a look at this? Because I belong to a number of...
Okay, so we need to be careful when we talk about online places, because there are differences between them. Payoneer and PayPal, they operate like an online bank account of sorts to an extent. It's not a bank, it's an online place where you can send and receive money. iSettle is a payment portal. An IZ tool is a card machine where you put a credit card and people at a meeting can pay for something. PayPal and Pioneer do provide that possibility as well. PayPal, I know you can pay an invoice, you can ask somebody joining and they could pay directly via PayPal. I'm not sure how it would work for Pioneer though, but I would imagine it's possible.
Right. No, when we chartered the club, we've got people from 10.
But I'd be quite curious about whether or not running a club from Pioneer is possible. I would imagine it potentially is. And I would be, we can take it offline. I'd be quite interested to know if you look seriously into this.
Yeah, I know that there are other companies as well where you can actually have an online account in 2 or 3 different currencies even.
Yeah.
Or a number of different currencies. It's the amount of work as opposed to the trying to save a certain amount of fees. Fees are quite heavy with PayPal.
Yeah. I would love to take some more questions, but I actually do have another meeting I started about 20 minutes ago. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to make a move pretty soon. But thank you, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Antonio, for organizing, Nick, Nuala, Zoopmaster, and Timing. Thanks very much for all the questions. Let me send the slides in the chat, and I'll stay until they're all sent out.
Well, thank you very much, Florian. We really appreciate this evening. I'm sure everybody who's here realizes how valuable this information is. If you'd like to take yourself off mute, everyone, and just give Florian a round of applause.
Thank you, Florian.
Yeah, thank you, guys.